All right, Cancer, I think that some of you may be struggling with accepting that there are some things that you cannot change, and there needs to be a little bit more focus on the things that you can make better right now, but you have to be able to see it first. So impossible things, working through disbelief, imaginative leaps and fresh perspective, and then the fates. Now, I've had issues with fate this week, but this one's a little bit different. So first of all, impossible things. It says a struggle to accept what seems unlikely. Devote regular time to improving a situation. Become better at something you care about or changing something for the better. Meditate on a miracle and believe in impossible things. It may seem unlikely that a situation can change, but if you take that leap, so to speak, and you can see how something can change for the better, then it's going to be easier for you to put that effort into that. But with the fates, you need to know what things you can change and what things you can't. So the fates talks about fate, karma, accepting that there are things you cannot change and knowing what those things are. And it talks about the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that that's where some of you may be struggling, thinking that there is a situation in your life that is never going to change, right? But very similar to Geminis, if you can imagine it, you can create it, but you have to make that leap in believing that the impossible can become possible if you learn to put your time and effort into the things that can change for you. Now, that tied into where some of you may be going dark, like I get it. So, anger and chains. This, like I've said continuously looking at this deck, I like anger because I believe that anger can be more constructive than despair and regret and depression. But it depends on where it's directed and how you use it. In this case, it may not be directed in the right way. So the moon phase here is waning crescent. The stage is anger. It says, force channeled outside, unreasonable, undirected, but powerful. And the sentence says, I've got to break free. I want to be free. Now going dark, it says, anger is not the road to clarity. It is not a controlled effort or a cold dish. It is raw, primal, and explosive. It is the loss of reason, the loss of restraint, a bomb burning bright in black color, a wax seal carefully crafted to be immediately broken. But anger is also freedom. How can you break a single thread woven with a million others? How can you unfetter yourself from a bad situation, letting all the rest unchanged? It doesn't work like that. When you need to break free, you need to shake and shout. And more things will be broken than just what you want to hurt. They are like a bundle. You can target, but you cannot choose. Break many to break one, save one to save many. I look at this and I think that for some of you, if you're tired of being in those chains, whatever those chains are, and you're wanting to break free, that anger could be directed in a way that you don't want it to go. So what I would say here is you need to be careful about how you're directing the anger. The anger needs to be used to kick you in the ass, to get you out of the dark place, but not to hurt yourself and change everything in your life because of it. Right? The bomb going off, so to speak. But some of you may be really fucking tired of being in a bad situation. All right, Cancer, here's your overall, the 10 of Cups. So the focus is going to be on your overall happiness, probably situations within the home, getting to a place where you feel that long-lasting happiness and emotional fulfillment, right? So this could be a really good thing here. It just depends on what is going on around it. But this being the overall, to me, is like where the focus needs to be on what is going to make you happy for a long time to come, right? Wowza, man. So in the past, death. So I look at that and I think that something has definitely changed where you can't go back, right? But death is about the transformation, being the phoenix, you know. But I've been seeing this continuously. I look at this, though, and think something in your past has changed you to where you're not ever going to be able to go back to how things were. You know, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, right? But it being in the past can also say that, for some of you, it's not that easy. Like I always say with death, when death comes in, you don't have a choice. It's going to happen. You can either go with it or you can go kicking and screaming. It's one or the other, but it is happening. And then in the present, the Chariot. For some of you, you may have to now, because of something changing or ending, are having to move and make a big move in order to get back to a place where, you have that happiness. But I still see that for you being the overall. It's just, how are we getting there? Now, with the Chariot, we're also talking about willpower and self-control. Getting control over your emotions, right? Getting those opposing forces working together so that you can get momentum and see victory. And I love the Chariot for that. And I love your card. And I love the magic carpet here. I think it's a beautiful card. But it's like you're turning your back to the illusion now and the light is shining in front of you. That's kind of how I see that. But like I said, it's only because something has changed. That's not going to ever go back to what it was. Wow, Cancer. What? The Emperor. I think that for a lot of you, if something has happened within your home life or just with your overall happiness here, where something has changed in a really big way with death, I think that definitely with the Chariot and the Emperor, there's a little bit more control and a sense of direction here. But with the Emperor coming out, I do see that as you being a little bit more firm and taking more control. And that could be over, kind of what is going on within the home, within relationships, things like that, because of the Ten of Cups. But it's like you enforcing your will onto a situation now in order to get it back to where it needs to be. So I kind of look at this as something that otherwise would have been a really happy situation. But like I said, with death, that's a big change, something definitely ending. But wow, really? You've got Scorpio, you, and then Aries. Cancer. Your best path to follow, the Ace of Cups. There is an opportunity there for a new beginning. A new beginning for you to be happy for a long time to come. And it's beautiful, but you have to take advantage of that Ace of Cups. But I'm wondering how, the Chariot is kind of like tied into this here. But I look at this in this position as something that's kind of like being handed to you. Here is your opportunity now. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to create that overall happiness out of it? And this could be, like I said, a new opportunity here within a relationship or with love in your life. Looking at the cups being here, but still there is that overall happiness. Oh my God. What the fuck, Cancer? The hell is going on? The Tower in your environment connected to the Chariot. This kind of reminds me of the vice versa tarot when you look at the Tower on that side and you see, the two sphinxes on either side of the tower. Well, what direction are you going to go in now? And this may be you really having to make a big change or a big move in your life, looking at the Chariot, like literally moving, right? But now going with the Tower here in your environment and looking at it connected to your past. Yeah. So definitely a big ending and a big change in your life. But with the Tower, this could be something that just kind of came out of nowhere. But again, I go back to the traditional meaning of the Tower. It was fake shit in the first place. It needed to come down. Things needed to change. It couldn't withstand. So, and I don't really see the shock with this one, right? It's starting to burn though, and eventually it's going to collapse. But I think for a lot of you, it's like drastic change that is happening. It may be happening suddenly for you, but I think that for you, you're needing a sense of direction out of this. Because like I said, what you're trying to get back to is control. Big time here between these two, and get back to where there is happiness in your life. But it may require you to make a huge drastic change. especially if you have gone through your own personal drastic change with death. What was will never be again, and it cannot hold up in your future. And with the Chariot, you are tapping into your own power here and going, even if it means drastically changing everything. But you still have, like I said, this Ace of Cups. And this could be a brand new opportunity for you to have something that is going to give you what you are wanting, that overall happiness, right? Wow, man. Your hopes and your fears, the Five of Cups. And I look at that and I think that for a lot of you, that is kind of like what's already happening almost. But I think that the fear is that everything will continue to be devastating, especially with the Tower being there. So the Five of Cups are talking about emotional pain. And I always point out here that she's like on her own rock, on her own island, surrounded by her suffering. But you are never an island, right? This is you needing to see what is still available to you, even though you may have already been let down. The fear is that, you know, those emotions are going to prevail, that it'll always be your experience. You know what it reminds me of is Fated to Suffer. And it's funny because I remember getting into that reading and thinking that this is Cancer, but it wasn't. And now it's like coming up, and now like I understand, right? So, but what was more important, I think, for you to understand is the anger over, you know, what is drastically changing in your life. But like I said, all of this is creating a new opportunity for you. But I look at this as this continuing. Am I going to be let down again? Am I constantly going to be disappointed? Am I constantly going to be suffering and dealing with these emotions? I think I need to go back to drinking wine while doing these readings. Jesus, Cancer. All right. Oh my God. And then coming out the Hangman. Look at all these fucking majors. Wow, man. The Hangman coming out, I don't really see as not moving forward because you're already doing that in the present moment. But I think everything is going to change your perspective looking at the Hangman, because you're talking about needing to get a different perspective on what you've experienced in order to make different decisions to act. The Hangman is not acting, not making any decisions. But maybe you've been looking at things from a perspective that was not helping you. You know, so I see the Hangman as a good thing, especially in connection to the Emperor here when it comes to your happiness, your forever happiness. I need to change my perspective and get control over what is happening so that things can go back to being emotionally fulfilling for you. First of all, the Page of Pentacles. Here's the thing. I look at death and I look at that in connection to this, and the Hangman is you changing your perspective on what you were trying to start. And with death, it may not have gone the way that you thought, and it's never going to go back to where it's going to be at the ground level and you'll be able to build back up. This is about you taking the information you now know to start something different, but only after your perspective has changed with the Hangman. Now is not the time to try to build something new. It's time to make the drastic change that's needed, get rid of the fake shit, get all of that out of your life, make a move forward, but reconsider how you are rebuilding. That's kind of how I look at this. The Magician. Now, you know, like I've always said with the Magician, this is about manifesting that cool ass shit, right? Being the Magician. I don't really see this as the sleight of hand, not in this situation. Sometimes I look at the Magician that way, but generally I look at it as your ability to pull from the divine source, bring it down to earth, and fucking manifest what you want. But you are responsible for what you are creating in your life. But this is you getting to a place where you need to, you know, remember that you have what you need to create what you want. And things don't need to always be this way, where there is the drastic collapse and the constant depression surrounding it, you know. Now, with Temperance and looking at the Hangman, I see that as good. I see that as you finally have gotten control. Now I need to take a step back here and get back to a place where I am in balance. You know, not only are we talking about temperament and not being like overly angry here, but we're also talking about you not, getting too pulled to one side or the other, or feel like you're being pulled in two different directions, which is funny because that can very much show with the Chariot, you know? But I look at this as you needing to chill out. And I think that with the Hangman, that's exactly what you're doing. You know, after all of this craziness, I just need a moment of peace almost, you know? Wow. Cancer? Holy crap. There may have been something going on with a relationship here where you may have been trying to rebuild things. I see that. I see this. But things change in a way that is never going to go back to what it was. And it's going to require you to get, control and a sense of direction and change things in a really big way in order for there to be that opportunity all over again, right? But the thing is like I said, I see that as disappointment, especially with this being here as part of your past connected to death. But it's still about cleaning the slate here and rebuilding in a way where you have learned from the experience of the past. And then wisdom. If you detach yourself from the way that you have viewed this situation before, again with the Hangman, that is where that wisdom and that enlightenment is going to come in. But teach is talking about you have been through an experience where you can share your knowledge and your wisdom to teach someone else, to share that experience. But this could also about you needing to teach yourself based on what you have learned, and detach and find that inner wisdom, right? And then valiant courage, take action with passion. I look at that as kind of like the Knight of Wands. So you need to be enthusiastic and you need to start taking action with passion. But only after you have gained a different perspective on what you've experienced here. I like it. It's complex, it's deep, and I can see your perspective. But I do love the fact that we're looking at the Ten of Cups as your overall with the Ace of Cups. To me, it's very beautiful. But this is going to be a major event in a lot of your lives. But you need to take your focus away from where you have been let down, right? And I think that that is a lot of where, the Hangman and Temperance is coming in. And I think that that's a beautiful place for you to be after, the destruction of the tower, right? But be careful about how you kind of create that. Some of you may feel like that is what you need to do. But, again, I kind of go back to the undirected anger, which is understandable, especially if something has happened within, your love life, within the home, with family members, relationships. But remember, there's the opportunity for a new beginning that is going to bring you, like I said, that overall happiness.